So, welcome back to TOL FALAS. I do like this map, and it's been a while since I actually did something on this map. I'm not actually in this battle, but nonetheless I wanted to show it anyway. I do really enjoy this map, and the last match I showed on this map was also quite an enjoyable one. Now, also just, obviously ModDB and the Discord will be in the description below, as well as the timestamp for the battle starting if you don't care for all of this ancillary stuff. But I have fiddled around with the settings again, and I have turned on Bloom, which apparently is a little bit hefty in terms of the requirements to use it, but it should be fine. I mean, it's not actually in-game, so it shouldn't crash or anything, I hope. But yeah, it does look better, but the problem is I think I'm coming to the end of what I can do to actually make it look better by just using the in-game stuff, and I think it's more of a problem with the rendering, and unfortunately my editing software seems to make rendering a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. So I'm going to try and fiddle around with a few things, but if it comes down to the point where I'm not able to make any meaningful improvements on how it is, because I do want to eliminate some of the blur that happens when I move the camera on the final YouTube versions, then I might have to look into actually buying editing software finally, because I did get given the current one that I'm using, and it does the job, and it does actually render in 1080, and it does it in a reasonable time, but if it doesn't remove the blur, if I'm not able to change stuff like the bit rates and stuff like that, then there's no point. So I might be a poor university student, but I might actually have to invest in some decent editing software if I'm going to do these videos any justice, because a lot of these battles do deserve to be shown in their full graphical fidelity, because after all, that is a luxury we do not have in the actual game when we have to play on lowest settings. So, without further ado, let's go through the army compositions. Now, I believe this is good versus evil. Let me just check. Yep, that is Umbar, that is Gundabad, and that is Rune. So yes, it is good versus evil indeed. So, first of all, we'll start off with the forces of good, who I believe are defending. The evil forces have got slightly more in terms of funds, so they will be forced to attack. Of course, the attackers won the last time I showed a battle on this map with similar sorts of rules. So we have Son of the Dunedain playing as the High Elves. He's got some Eldarenway archers up here, just watching over this approach, because of course you can go round the back way through the streets, which happened in the last scenario we did on TOL FALAS, and the street fight went thoroughly in favour of the attackers there. So we'll see how that goes. And the rest of Son of Dunedain's army is down here, so it looks like he's going to be trying to reinforce the centre, which is wise, because the brute force assault from Gundabad is likely to be pretty brutal. He's got some Eldarenway swordsmen. The Bloom really does add some really nice graphics. I think I have very much come to the end of what I can do in-game. So here we have the Falas Lords, and again, the Falas Lords, decent spears, but I've always found them to be quite underwhelming for their price point. Again, I went through that in the last battle. They are still very, very good, but I don't find them as good as stuff like Shielded Fountain Guard, Eldarenway swordsmen, despite the fact they have 4 hit points. It's very strange. I can't really explain it. There's something going on behind the scenes. The Eldarenway spearmen, on the other hand, definitely more value for money here, I feel. They are not as effective, but they are cheaper, and they do still have 2 hit points, and they will hold the line just as well, I think. We also have some Sword Quindi, obviously just the workhorses of the High Elven army. You're going to need some Quindi in some respect in your army, but, whether that's Bow Quindi or Sword Quindi doesn't really matter. And then over here we have the Imladris guards holding a line in terms of pikemen. The attackers are going to need to figure out very carefully how they're going to engage this, whether that be through archers or brute force. We shall see how they deal with that. We've also got some Imladris Storm Guard. Under normal circumstances, these guys are not viewed upon particularly fondly in the community at the moment, mainly because the Mithlon nobles are more effective and they are cheaper, but I do think the Imladris Storm Guard certainly take home the style point. So if you want to bring them just for their looks, that's fine. And it's not like they're a bad unit, they will still do the job. It's just in terms of nickeling and diming, sometimes that can win you a game. And then we have more Eldarenway archers. Of course, armor-piercing archers is something that the High Elves have in droves. So it's going to be interesting to see how the attackers deal with that as well, because obviously the skirmish is going to be real. Then we have 2 units, I believe, of Noratirno warriors over here. Again, slightly lighter Elven archers, but they're up on the cliff, so it'll be harder to skirmish them down, and they have very long-range missiles. And then we also have a catapult. So again, we shall now move into the middle over here, and we come to Lothlorien, played by Corsaro93. And Lothlorien, of course, another Elven faction, a little bit more in terms of numbers from these guys, because they have a more dedicated mid-tier. Some Sylvan Axemen without the armour upgrade this time, so they have their regular look as opposed to their slightly more badass look. But still, they're still a very good unit. The armour piercing will serve them quite well against the Orcs and against all of the evil factions that are displayed, actually. Then we have my favourite Lothlorien unit, the Galadrim Veteran Warriors, very lethal. They do tend to use their ammunition quite quickly, but they are still very lethal with their shots. They're very accurate and they will mow down a unit very quickly, but that is basically all they can do. Then back here we can see some Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, of course. Not quite as good as the Elder Spearmen or the Heer-E Lang. No, that's the Swordman. Heer-En Ek. That's it. Not quite as good as either of those two, but you can have 3 before the cost increases, so, you know, it's one of those things where you have to decide which is more important, numbers or quality. And then back here we have a Ballista, so he's going to be able to destroy enemy artillery on the approach. So that's quite a wise pick for the one who's in the centre. He's also brought some cavalry. So he's got some Galadriel mounted company again. These guys don't have hit points, but they do have a lot of speed. I found it very easy to sort of micro these guys and charge them in and then quickly get them back out again. It's a luxury that a lot of heavy cavalry units don't have. And of course this is a light cav unit, but they have the stats to survive a little longer in melee. We have more Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. Back here we have some Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen, so of course this is going to be the damage dealers of the Lothlorien line. They're going to need support though on this front, otherwise Rune and Gundabad will absolutely bowl them over, so the other 2 forces of good are going to need to get in and help them out pretty quickly. So we've got some Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen, more Spearmen, and then at the front here we have some Sylvan Heavy Archers, and he does also have this position locked down as well. This is a perfect position to use on TOL FALAS for some archers. Sylvan Heavy Archers, they're already in range, despite the fact that the enemy army is quite far away. So now for the one who sent me the replay, Master Blaster. He's very helpful when he sends me replays, to be honest, because obviously now that semester has started up again, I don't have the time to actually play as many battles as I would like, but nonetheless, he's got some Dalian marksmen. He's of course playing as Dale, which again, you know, it means the skirmish advantage is going to be very heavily in the defenders' favour. They're 3 skirmish heavy factions. He's got some Lake Town Spearmen, so again, he's going to be bringing the lower tier units, but the numbers that he's going to bring could well be important. He's also got the Dalian Paladins. Very slow, but very, very heavy duty units. They're going to be able to rip through the armoured units of the attackers, as well as the Barding Herd. So he's got the options to go through armour. He's also got some Lake Town Infantry and the Pikemen. I like this army composition. It's got options everywhere. He's also got some Swordmasters and some Dalesmen. So again, he's got a lot of shock infantry, some pikes, some dismounted Elves as well. Yeah, he's got he's got options all over the field, it seems. More Dalesmen again, so he's got the lower tier, he's got the mid tier Dalian Marksmen, and over there we've got some Hearth Watchmen. The Hearth Watchmen are not very good at all, but you know, if you've got a bit of money spare, you may as well get them. And then there's one unit over here, some Dalian Spearmen. I believe he had some Dale Dragon Slayers somewhere as well. Nonetheless, now for the evil factions. Need to hurry these compositions up a little bit. I'm waffling a little bit longer than I'd like. We have Baconfish 302 playing as Umbar. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Umbar, despite the fact they do have a bit of a deficiency when it comes to, well, their focus is a little bit weird, but I'll go into that if they still have it in the final version. But we have some Corsair Savages, lightly armoured, but all on the attack. Have to say, with the bloom turned on, their skin colour is a little orange. Then we have some Corsair Warriors. The Corsair Warriors are pretty underwhelming, to be honest with you, but they will at least offer a little bit more survivability where the Savages won't. Some Naru Naaru Royal Archers, a very decent archer unit here. Again, they probably won't win in a skirmish fight against any of the Elven Archers, but if they can save them for the late game, they may well make a difference. Corsair Fencers, one of the most underrated, well, I wouldn't say underrated, I would say people know how good they are, but because I haven't seen Umbar played a lot, you don't get to see them. They're a very attack-minded unit. Dual rapiers, very good against armoured units, very poor against skirmish fire, however. Then we have some Abrazanim and Nadu Tariq. Again, these guys are more armour-piercing units, but they're much more focused around defence. Much lower base damage, but they have the shields, of course, you know, a much higher base defence. Then he's got some Abrazanim Narduzagar. Again, they don't have armour-piercing, but they are a very good two-hander unit. And then we've got some Castamir's Chosen again. Get a nice good look at the Castamir's Chosen. Hopefully this will translate to YouTube if I can figure out the editing, because it does look better than ever when you're seeing it live. But yes, very nice unit. And they have some cavalry as well, so again, could be useful in the late game. The Warlords of Umbar. More fencers, so he's got a pretty darn elite army. More Nadu Tariq. He's got some Naru Naaru Royal Guard as well. He's got a catapult, and then back here he's got more Castamir's Chosen, more Narduzagar, more warriors, and more warriors. This is a very elite army. The attackers have got a pretty significant advantage if all the armies are like that. We shall see how well the defenders do. Oh, I'm in a tree. So yeah, here we have Pharaoh playing as the Orcs of Gundabad. Gundabad with a lot of funds are a terrifying force to face. Guardians of Khan Doom. Then over here we have a Ballista. Then at the front he has got some Witch Realm Pikemen, some Black Uruks of the mountains forming the front line. Although, based on the amount of units per well, the unit scaling is turned down, I think, to medium or low. Again, possibly to counteract lag, but also this will take away some of the numbers of Gundabad, so they, you know, a little bit of a mini nerf for them there. Rudal Berserkers, very good unit, hit points. Snow Trolls, you know, obviously you don't really need an introduction to Trolls. Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, Witch Realm Blackguard, all of the important units are here. Gundabad Guard, more Black Uruks of the Mountains, Rudal Heavy Pikes, so more Gundabad Guard, more Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. More Witch Realm Pikemen, they've got all of their best units, Witch Realm Hammer Guard as well, Guardians of Khan Doom, and more Rudal Berserkers. I can only apologise for my croaky voice, I am in fact losing it because of a cold, but that can't be helped. And then finally we have Rune, played by Tundra's Fox, we have Loknar Rim, we have something hidden over there, I can only assume it's the Carmel's Shadow Bows, or the Dragon's Wrath Crossbows, or both. I would definitely bring the Dragon's Wrath Crossbows with how many funds the attackers seem to have. Lokgamp Rim, again, nice pipeline. If they can bring them in without being shot, that will be very, very good for them. 4 units of Lok Flag Rim, again, will be pretty useful against Dale and the High Elves, not so useful against Lothlorien. Same story with the Carmel's Chosen. The Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen will be good against Lothlorien, very good in fact if you can get the if you can get them into melee without them dying. Back here we have Swift Blades, Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen, Catapult, and more Swift Blades. And up on this hill we have a pretty sneaky archer position. He's trying to sort of rain down some death on here, some Loknar Rim and some Lok Scion Rim. So he's deployed kind of all over the place, but that doesn't matter. I mean, Gundabad are obviously going to be the ones taking the brute force approach here, so without further ado, you know, it's a 43,000 frame, so it's going to be pretty long. Let's get into this. So the Sylvan Heavy Archers. Now, one thing to remember about the Lothlorien Archers is they have a very high fire rate, so they're going to empty their ammunition pretty darn quickly. But again, provided you can target the right units, that's not going to be a problem. Lothlorien, what are they targeting? Let's go over there and have a look, shall we? They are targeting the Loknar Rim. And again, loose formation against the Elves doesn't actually help you all that much, because the Elves are so accurate that they will still score a good number of hits. Obviously it's better than doing nothing, but even so. Honestly, the Loknar Rim are not the worst unit to lose to the Elven Archers. It would be much more problematic if they were losing their pikemen, but I think the Witch Realm Pikes might be just out of range, and the Gamp Rim certainly are, even for the Elves. We shall see. But again, you can see actually the High Elves, it seems like they're actually going to move into the town over here. So last time, this town is perhaps where we lost the fight, because obviously I was defending last time, and the town, the guy who was defending here bunched up his forces too much, and he was overwhelmed and crushed pretty easily. But, you know, hopefully we can avoid that happening this time. Unfortunately though, this does mean that Lothlorien will be left to defend the front line largely alone, although Dale are sending over some reinforcements now. I'm a little surprised actually that Gundabad is not charging forward more quickly, because the brute force of Gundabad would be more than sufficient to break through Lothlorien. They just don't have the numbers or the mass to deal with it. Are they firing? They are not. Interesting. So it's a bit more of a passive passage of play here. So I'm going to make a little cut, and we shall rejoin when the action is really starting to get going. So this is quite a crafty play from Tundra's Fox. He's positioned his catapult up on this hill, and with it he can bombard down onto the Lothlorien position, and, well, I assume the Lothlorien and Dalian position. Lothlorien cannot afford too many losses either, and they are being bombarded. Now, I'm not, you know, in terms of, like, playing battles and, like the spectacle of it, you know, a skirmish fight like this and a bombardment isn't the most thrilling thing in the world to watch, but having said that, it is a very worthwhile tactic. I mean, I would still personally be in favour of Gundabad really charging in and really putting pressure under Lothlorien, and then this bombardment would have even more effect, because Lothlorien would be forced to bunch up to an extent. As it is though, the players are being relatively passive. I mean, if we look over here, we can see that crossing this bridge we have these Corsair Savages. They're actually being let across by the archer position that Son of the Dunedain has set up over here with 2 Eldarenway archers. Now obviously, you know, the majority of the Umbar army has actually shifted over to the centre, and I don't blame him for that, because any elite units that would be committed over here would be savaged by these Eldarenway archers. Armour-piercing archers are pretty ridiculous in the current patch, and the Eldarenway archers are probably the most cost-effective archers in the game at the moment, because they are the only sort of non-general's bodyguard unit in the game at the moment that has armor-piercing archers. At least, you know, the only unit that couldn't be used as one, really. Like, stuff like the Galadrim Veteran Warriors are technically not the general's bodyguard unit, but they are, you know, a higher tier archer, whereas Elder Enways, in relative terms, they're not the highest tier archers that the High Elves can field. Still, Tundra's Fox is now sort of retreating his catapult a little bit, but I think I will make another cut because, again, I just wanted to sort of mention what the players are doing, but, you know, the action has not really started in earnest yet. They're still being very, very touchy-feely about the whole affair. As we can see, there are some cav charges happening over here. Umbar sent forward a sort of expeditionary force over here, but there's literally nothing else over here. So these 2 units of Corsair Warriors and the 1 unit of Corsair Savages is going to be ripped apart by the charges from the Galadrim Mounted Company. They will get a few kills, of course, because the Corsair Savages are technically effective against cav, but look, the whole unit was basically wiped out in a single charge. That's what happens when the unit scaling is on a lower setting, so medium or light or low. The cavalry will wipe out entire units in a single charge. Now the Imladra Storm Guard and the Sword Quindy, again, not the best charge because it went back into the back of his own man, but they will easily mop up these Corsair Warriors. I've mentioned before that Corsair Warriors are not really the most inspiring unit. I've always found them to be quite lackluster. That's okay though, because Umbar do make up for it in other ways, but again, 3 units of the Umbar army has largely been wiped out, so the bombardment that they're suffering in the centre still is largely being made up for on this flank by ripping through just a few units, thinning out the numbers a little bit without losing too much in return. And this of course means that the Galadrim Mounted Company will be able to sort of flank around. Not really the most important thing though, because of course the Warlords of Umbar are in play, and if they get into a sustained melee with the Warlords, they will lose that pretty handily. But of course they are faster, so with good micro, who knows? But you saw how quickly these Corsair Warriors buckled under the Elven pressure again. The Imladra Storm Guard, despite the fact that they aren't exactly the most cost-effective unit in the world, they are still an elite unit. They're getting a little bloodied up, but that's fine. They're not really sustaining many losses, and these Corsairs, they are doomed, and they are routing, tired and broken. And that's pretty much them all gone. The Galadrim Mounted Company doing a very good job there. I actually missed the initial charge there, but no matter. It was over so quickly that I couldn't actually sort of reorganise myself. Meanwhile, let's go back to the centre and see if things are finally starting to kick off. Indeed, Tundra's Fox is sort of sending forward some expeditionary forces of runic Swiftblades. Again, these guys aren't armour-piercing, but against Lothlorien that doesn't necessarily matter. There's a bit of skirmish fire coming down on the advancing Swiftblades. Not exactly the most accurate fire in the world, though. It's not hitting them a great deal. And they are, of course, shielded units. You can see that these buildings have sustained some damage from the catapult bombardment. There's a few units of crispy dead bodies down here, but only like individuals. Like there was a patch over there was probably the biggest hit, but nothing too significant. So yeah, will Rune commit? It looks like Gundabad are the ones being very cautious. So again, eventually Gundabad will be unleashed, and the defenders have to hope that they can withstand it when the hammer is dropped, essentially. Because these are 3 very potent infantry factions they're facing. It's again, Umbar are probably the weakest of the 3 attacking armies in terms of factions, but they're still a very infantry-heavy faction. They've got a lot of decent options on foot, and this is a map which certainly favours infantry engagements to cavalry, because there's a lot of choke points, a lot of opportunity for pikes to trap cav. Some Dalesmen. You don't see the Dalesmen an awful lot. Again, they are a very low-tier shock unit. They are armour-piercing. They're kind of reminiscent of the Lumbermen of Eriador, I guess, only probably slightly worse, if anything. But again, you know, just to fill out the numbers a little bit, and again, the armour piercing may well help them if they can get in amongst a more survivable unit. Meanwhile, it looks like we're finally going to have some infantry on infantry action over here. The mixture of the Lake Town infantry and pikemen will be, you know, they'll do the job against Swiftblades. The addition of the pikemen will be what wins them this fight. The Lake Town infantry won't do too well, but as long as they can sort of provide a buffer for the pikes will do the work for them. And again, on lower unit scaling, pikes I think are even more potent, because you can't just send a big blob of men to smash through them. So it's good to see that the Imladris guards are in effect, and it's good to see that Dale did bring their Lake Town pikes, but again, the pike advantage is in favour of the attackers. They brought Witch Round pikes, Rudar heavy pikes and Loke Gamper in. So we shall see if the skirmishers of the defenders can be used to good effect. And over here we can see that it's a similar story on this side. Lake Town pikemen and Lake Town infantry facing off against the advancing Swiftblade. There's also Loke Flag Rim coming in now though. Loke Flag Rim a little bit more heavy duty, and they're really getting into the formation. This is what you've got to do against pikes. Again, the Lake Town infantry should have been in front of the pikemen, because now the formation has been buckled and they're using their mass to really get in amongst them. And that means that the Lake Town units are going to fall on this front unless they're reinforced pretty quickly. You can see that the Flag Rim with their mass were able to punch through all the way through the line. Lake Town units are not the most heavy duty, although again these Dalian marksmen do have a point blank shot into them. And Dale are actually really closing the jaws with the dismounted Earls, so they will win on this front. But again, just if you're going to have a shielded unit, put them in front of the pikes, because it will better shield the pikes formation. Make it much more difficult for them to buckle under pressure. And again, it looks like Dale is really the one taking the first defence, which is understandable with their slightly lower tier units. Flag Rim have also been committed over here. But again, on this front they have also committed a few Dalesmen to try and shore up the line. But again, you can see the effect the mass has on these lower mass units. It is the problem with lower tier pikes, they can be pushed aside a little too easily. It's why you want a heavy duty unit really. The Lake Town infantry did their best, but they're not exactly built for this kind of thing. The balance of forces is evenly matched, but the defenders really need to be winning these kinds of early engagements if the battle is going to go in their favour. Again, the attackers are going to pay for this in a sense. Again, the Dalesmen are going to fall pretty quickly, but they will get some armour piercing damage off on these heavy duty runic units. Again, at this point, with these sorts of lines buckling, you can see there's some Corsair warriors from Baconfish 302. And they are worming their way in and around the lines. Lothlorien there. Actually, no, it's the Dale Lake Town pikemen. They're being skirmished down. They're being shot. And again, I'm wondering where the Lothlorien units are. They've all fallen back, I assume, to this hill over here. But now we can see that with these Corsair warriors charging into the backs of these pike units, this part of the line is going to fall pretty quickly. And this was the issue that we had last time as well. In addition to losing in the city, we allowed ourselves to be flanked far too easily. Now we've got some Hearth Watchmen coming in. Again, this is a rather desperate attempt to sort of staunch the bleeding. There is the Galadrin Mounted Company over here, who will do a far better job. Again, if we look over there, that charge, you know, defeat is now a distinct possibility. Again, they're engaging Swordmasters, so that's not exactly surprising. So again, these Corsair warriors will probably fall. Not to these Hearth Watchmen though. Again, I think this is just a matter of trying to sort of stall the attackers. Galadrin Mounted Company charging into those Low Flag Rim and what's left of the Swift Blades. So over here the attackers are doing a very good job. Meanwhile over here though, the attackers are losing this one because of the addition of the Earls and of course the Archers. Getting a nice close-up of the dismounted Earls versus Low Flag Rim, a clash of the Titans. It is one of course that the Earls will win courtesy of their hit points and higher stats. Low Flag Rim of course will leave their mark with their maces. Still some pikemen left alive. There's still some infantry on this side. Again, Rune, they punch through the middle of that formation. Now though they're finding themselves a little bit surrounded. The Archers have sort of changed their target though. What are they going after? They're going after the shadow bows. There's also Goblin Trackers being sent forward. Again, more skirmishers need to be committed to the... If they're going to... Again, I'm not really sure if I agree with this, because they've committed several elite units forward, which kind of implies that they're going to defend this area, but they're not committing heavily enough, and Rune's infantry is really leaving its mark. It's a bit of an unfortunate situation for the defenders at the moment. These Low Flag Rim are going to secure victory on this front as well. The Earls have taken a bit of a beating. If we look back over here, are there any Dalesmen left alive? Yeah, there are 30 of them. The Galadrin Mounted Company does have a clear charge in though. The Galadrin Mounted Company is doing a very good job here in the early game at paying for itself. Again, these Loka units, as soon as those Swordmasters come after them, they will lose. But again, just the fact that Dale is committing some of their elite units this early is rather telling. The Hearth Watchmen and now the Dalesmen have been committed to try and meet the enemy in the field. These Hearth Watchmen have got 59 remaining. The Corsair Warriors, I did bitch a little bit about them earlier on, but Hearth Watchmen is a unit they will very handily deal with. These Runic Swiftblades are fighting to the death. The Low Flag Rim are shaken. So over here the Dalesmen are going to contribute to the failure of this attack at least. Again, I feel like if Gundabad had been more aggressive, this fight would be all but over already. Because these initial lines would just be crumbling and Dale would not have enough left for the late game. And the numbers discrepancy would be too great to bear, I think. The Dale Swordmasters doing their job in melee. So over here they're winning, but now over here is where the tide has turned. You can see these Carmel's shadow bows the target of the skirmish fire. Understandably, they're pretty poor in a skirmish fight because of their lack of armour. You know, but they've got decent missile damage and decent accuracy. Now Rune again. Rune are the ones being really aggressive. They're committing forward more elite units. Loke Scion Rim, a high tier armour piercing spear unit. This will really secure their position here and give them a place to build from if they so choose. Over here we can see the Loke Flag Rim that have been committed. The Golden Boys, the OGs. They've always been. I've always liked Rune's style. There's something about the gold. It manages to be flashy without being vulgar. Meanwhile, over here, these Dalian marksmen are out of ammunition. They are armor piercing in melee, but they don't have the expertise to take on Loke Flag Rim in melee. But fortunately, I see in the background over there, Dale Swordmasters. They are being targeted by archer fire, but nonetheless, they will turn this fight around should they be allowed to. There's also what's left of the Hearth Watchman coming over here to try and shore up the line. But yeah, Tundra's Fox has done a good job here in the early game. I do like the Zweihanders of the Swordmasters, but this is a fight where they could find themselves outmatched pretty quickly. Again, the Hearth Watchman, a very low tier spear unit indeed, but they'll be glad for any reinforcements on this front line at this point. Meanwhile, over here, the last dregs of these Loke units, or Loka. I'm actually curious to know what the exact pronunciation of this is, because I've called them Loka and Loke before. Or Loki. Loki doesn't seem right. I'm pretty sure it's Loka. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm quite ignorant in terms of lore. But yeah, they have one on this front. They haven't got anything to sort of follow through over here, which is a little surprising. Meanwhile, over here, the pike position has been abandoned by Dale. They're sort of consolidating their forces a little more, letting the forces of evil have this position. But this is a bit of a killing ground because they will be surrounded on all sides. The Warlords of Umbar are menacingly coming forward. The Goblin Trackers. Gundabad are now committing. So this is going to be worrying for the defenders. And the Warlords of Umbar being in amongst the defenders' positions is going to be very harrowing for them. If they charge the right units, this could be lethal. They are a slower cav unit than the Galadriel Mounted Company, to be sure. And the Galadriel Mounted Company is coming over here. The Dale Dragonslayers should really be thinking about targeting these guys because again, they need to be dealt with quickly. In a cav to cav engagement, the Warlords of Umbar should beat the Galadriel Mounted Company under skirmish fire though. I think the defenders will just be glad to see the attackers' cavalry gone. And it does look like they're going to get their wish. I mean, the Galadriel Mounted Company, I can only assume that the Dale Dragonslayers are firing. Yes, they are. Unsurprising then that the Warlords have been so easily crushed. And again, the Dragonslayers don't have much ammo, so the fact that they won't be around in the late game could be pretty key. But yeah, the Warlords of Umbar have largely been dealt with. There's only 6 of them remaining, and what's left of the Mounted Company will be able to wrap them up pretty easily. Indeed, the Mounted Company are actually going to cause this unit of goblins to break very, very quickly. Goblin Trackers, of course, the second best Gundabad archer unit, breaking before the Mounted Company. Definitely paying for itself in droves. This is a very bold move by them though, because now they're going after the Shadow Guard, so that's understandable, but they need to get out of there before the Black Uruks can start to bite on them. But yeah, now Gundabad are really starting to advance, and with a lot of their units, it could be... The defenders are going to find it difficult. The High Elves are in a pretty good position. Lothlorien are also over there, but again, it's a matter of whether Dale and their army will be intact enough, because they've taken a bit of a beating early on. Let's have a look at the percentages of kills. They are ahead by 2%, that's nowhere near enough considering the numbers discrepancy between the two factions. You can see over here that Sylvan Axemen have been committed, and Sylvan Axemen will turn the tide over here with their armour piercing and their expertise in melee. They will be able to beat Flag Rim. Now that they're in and they are backing up what's left of the Swordmasters. The Swordmasters very bloody. Been in melee for quite a while against units they're not really designed to be going up against, but they will still beat nonetheless. Still Hearth Watchmen over here. Lake Town Pikemen being committed, Dalesmen, Lake Town Infantry. Again, I'm not sure I agree with this, because Gundabad are just going to recharge them very, very quickly. I mean, there isn't much in the way of runic units left, but Rune are now committing. I mean, Dale need to be thinking about falling back, because they don't have anything in the way of support from their allies, really. I mean, there's this one unit of Sylvan Axemen, but that's not going to stop this flood of Gundabad sort of rear-charging them. I think they realise that. I mean, the Loke Scion Rim being committed at just the right time for the attackers. Getting into these Sylvan Axemen. The Lake Town Infantry is turning around to try and help the Sylvan Axemen, but again, the Flag Rim? The Scion Rim, far too elite a unit for these Lake Town Infantry. And again, just through the farmhouses, we can see Gundabad on the march. The Shadow Guard are also firing. Let's have a look up on these hills. How many of these archer units are firing? I would suggest quite a few of them need to be. Oh, there's the Royal Guard of Dale as well. I must have missed them. The Dalian Marksmen are firing. The Sylvan Heavies are firing. Yeah, all of the Sylvan Heavies are firing. The Elder Enway Archers are getting in position. So yes, this is a killing field now. They really need to open up on this position and really let Gundabad have it, because if they can basically take Gundabad out of the equation with all their archer ammo, that will be definitely a worthwhile pursuit. Remains to be seen though. This is kind of, they've got this line essentially here, but it's not really a line because there's so many gaps in it, and the attackers are kind of exploiting that. We can see that this Sylvan Axeman unit is being kind of surrounded by this unit of Gundabad Guard, kind of overlapped, and then these Black Uruks are rear-charging into this position over here. This position is where I feel the defenders are really going to start to have some problems. The Black Uruks charging into the back of the Lake Town Infantry and the Dalesmen, and then over here we can see the Scion Rim are about to be backed up by Pikemen. And they're also receiving skirmish support from the Naru Na'aru Royal Archers. Yeah, this is the place where the defenders are going to start to struggle, so all credit goes to Tundra's Fox for his part in the attack. He took the most aggressive stance, and he's given his team a pretty good place to build from here. And there's more Scion Rim again. These Sylvan Axemen defeat seems certain again. They're a damn good mid-tier unit, the Sylvan Axemen, but the Gundabad Guard are a high-tier unit, and they are also, you know, it's kind of a disorganised structure here, and that's exactly what the Elves don't want when they're facing Gundabad. Disorganisation will always favour the faction that has more in terms of numbers, and of course the Elves don't have more in terms of numbers than anyone. Lothlorien may be over the other two Elven factions, but that's it. So yeah, this is however turning into a very one-front fight, because Umbar did not choose to advance into the town. So that at least could fall in favour of the defenders. Sword Quindy again, the High Elves have reinforced to an extent. Oh man, I did not notice this. I did not know when the Imladris Guards were committed, and unfortunately they have been pretty well savaged. I mean, they must have taken some pretty hefty skirmish fire from the Naru Na'aru and the Numenorian Shadow Guard, because that is a unit you cannot afford to lose in this situation. Sending it forward on its own is a highly, highly questionable decision, and over here the Lothlorien units are being overwhelmed. Again, the Sylvan Axemen, the Rudauer Berserkers. Again, the next patch, it seems, keeps getting delayed and delayed, but I really can't wait for Rudauer to be their own faction. I feel like the aggression really speaks to me. They feel like a version of Harad, which is more focused on their infantry and their javelins, and sort of they lose maybe a little bit in terms of like the cavalry, because Harad's cavalry is not half bad. It's fast, and of course you can augment it with the Mumakil. We've got the Witch Realm Blackguard coming through here. Yeah, I mean, you can see here that the position is being overwhelmed far too easily. So many units have been lost, and if we look over here, you know, they have pulled further ahead, I mean, in terms of percentages, but in terms of positional play. And then you can see the catapult is also firing down onto these nice clumps of infantry as they retreat. Elder Enway Spearmen taking hits in the background over there. Next to this burning farmhouse, we see the Dalesmen and the Lake Town units are soon to be fighting to the death. I mean, they're surrounded by Loke Scion Rim, Gundabad Guard, Guardians of Khan Doom, and Loke Gamp Rim. This is not a fight that basic Lake Town units can ever hope to win. There's a few elves mixed in amongst them as well. We're getting nice and close here. We shall see though. I mean, the defenders do still occupy some very nice defensive positions. They do still have a terrain advantage, but I'm not sure. I mean, Umbar have yet to commit any of their elite infantry units, so it's looking pretty bad. Pretty bad for the defenders. There's some Sword Quindy out here. There's some fighting going on, and it's down here. This Dalian Marksman covering the retreat. The Sword Quindy also getting in there. I mean, if they get rear charges off, they could actually They could finish off this one unit of Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. They're also taking Archer Fire, so yeah, this Witch Realm Scourge Raider unit is not long for this earth. Archers are the bane of their existence, but I do like them as a unit. Gundabad and their brute force. Disgustingly strong when they use it right, and they did bide their time, and it was very effective when they used it. They found the gaps in the enemy lines and they went for it. And there's this Gundabad Guard unit over here, following the Rudau Berserkers. I wouldn't go for the Gundabad Guard with the archers, it's not really worth it. They've got pretty decent armour. Rudau Berserkers slightly more. They do have shields, but they're not the most armoured unit in the world. This Witch Realm Blackguard is going to be concerning. Very elite unit indeed. One of the coolest looking units as well. I mean, they have that presence about them with their helms and their shields. Meanwhile, just get my angle right, you can see here. Yep, this is it. The position over here. Defended a little bit sloppily, I feel. And now the attackers have it. Man, my throat is getting sore. We have the Witch Realm Hammer Guard being moved forward. I don't see how the defenders can win this, simply because there's too much in the way of quality that the attackers still have. They didn't make them pay for that at all, really. We've got these Noratirno warriors, I assume, trying to get into a decent position to shoot.
Half the enemy force remains.
They're really very, very close to these Witch Realm Blackguard, though, and this unit of Sword Quindi is not going to hold off Rudau Berserkers and Witch Realm Scourge Raiders and Witch Realm Blackguard for long. Actually, no, they have their swords out, so maybe they're out of ammunition. Again, this lightly armoured archer unit, again, it's a bit of a waste to just have them out here, because they're just going to get run down by this elite Gundabad infantry that's coming for them. Or should I say Rudauer? Rudauer, the savage Northman. They're going to tear through these Noratirno warriors. Again, the Noratirno warriors are not bad, of course, they're elves, but Rudau Berserkers. Brute force is the name of the game. Over here, it's a defensive position, but I mean, there's nothing really stopping the attackers from skirmishing them down with what they have and then just wearing them down. I don't think the defenders have got enough. Oh, and they have a catapult still. Going for the spears. Not a bad target. I mean, I'd be tempted to go for something like paladins.
Defeat seems almost certain.
And looking at this, the Royal Guard are out of ammo. They've got their swords out. The Snow Trolls. Snow Trolls smashing through these Sword Quindi. Exactly the sort of unit trolls love to face. Easy to kill. Very lightweight. The Snow Trolls are coming in again. I do like the fact that the attackers are not slowing down. They're keeping their momentum, and then this catapult is really making them pay as well. They're really following through. I do like it when people play aggressively. There was a bombardment phase early on, but it worked out for them. But when they've committed, they've really committed. There's some Sindar Blade Masters that were hidden back here again. These trolls may be a little bit too overzealous. Charging into Elder Swordsmen, this is exactly the sort of unit they don't like to face. High attack two-handers, which are going to rip through them pretty quickly, and they are unsupported.
We've lost half of our men.
But now these spearmen are trying to hold the line. They need support though. Again, I think that this battle so far has been a story of unsupported defences. Dale were largely, they weren't supported enough in the initial defence, and now individual units like these Elder Spears not getting the support they need. They're up against Hammer Guard as well. Elder Spears are really very, very solid, but on their own they can't hope to fight all of these elite units. I mean, look, there's Guardians of Khan Doom in the background, there's Witch Realm Hammer Guard, there's Rudau Berserkers, and then just running past them we have the Witch Realm Blackguard, backed up by some depleted units of Black Uruks, and over here we can see that these Guardians of Khan Doom are charging in. They've maybe bitten off a little bit more than they can chew, but again, you can't have it all. What is this? Oh, they're just individual routing units. I thought maybe Dale had hatched a cunning plan for a second there, but then I thought, no, they're running the wrong way. But again, you can see Witch Realm Blackguard, victory seems certain, even against really very good units indeed, like these Sindar Blade Masters. Going to be a Lothlorien only unit next patch. Definitely a finesse style unit. And we have these spearmen trying their best, but again, Gundabad is Gundabad is at their best when they're acting as a wrecking ball, and they're certainly doing that. They will fizzle out eventually against this much elite units, or this many elite units I should say, but then they're going to have nothing left for when Umbar decide to commit their elite units. As we can see, Rune has still got some units to spare as well. This Hammer Guard is going to be like... It is going to be very difficult for the defenders to turn this one around. There goes the Gundabad General at the hands of the Sindar Blade Masters. Again, there have been sort of individual pockets where Gundabad has sort of overextended a little bit, but I feel like they've earned that over the course of the battle. The defenders' mistakes have been a little bit more serious so far. So it looks like once again TOL FALAS may well fall. Can anyone defend this place? Find out in part 3. That is, unless the defenders can turn this around. I mean, it's not all over yet. I mean, the percentages are starting to fall back again. So again, it's only 4% now that the defenders have in hand. Royal Guard again. Victory seems certain on these front lines now. The Falas Lords, the dismounted Elder Enway nobles, poking these Rudau Berserkers to death. And again, the Rudau Berserkers have been through a lot already. They've done their work. Down Prim. I think now is the time. I mean, the attackers may as well follow through on this front. Going across the bridges on this map is always a little dodgy. I mean, it's always the sort of thing that if you can help it, it's something you don't really want to do. What is this? These Imladris guards are being overcommitted again. They're going to be poked. They're going to be the subject of attrition. What are they doing? They should absolutely be forming part of the line. They could still be useful, but they're out on their own and they're being thoroughly wasted. Meanwhile, over here we can see the Witchround Blackguard and the Guardians of Khan Doom are going to have success over on this flank. And the Hammer Guard. That is the High Elven General, Elrond, who was part of the Falas Lords unit. They are now dead. Elder Enway Spearman. The old Elder Enway units, it does take a little bit to beat Imladris in terms of style. I can't wait for Linden. I'm a big fan of pikes, and apparently a pike and javelin focused faction. That's just the right amount of defensive and aggressive for me. Again, cavalry as well apparently, or light cav I believe. That'll be fun. Imladris of course are the all-rounders. If you want to have the highest tier of units in all capacity, you want to go Imladris. Of course, bear in mind you won't be able to afford all of this. Dalian Paladins and Royal Guard coming over to try and save these units over here. That should be sufficient to actually win this flank, but again, they're going to take too many losses. And again, there's still more Gundabad units being committed. Gundabad Guard helping out these Gamprim. Defeat does seem certain for the Gamprim. Over here we can see that the defending catapult is coming dangerously close to getting friendly fire. That really would be game over, I feel. The attacking catapult is also firing. Without flaming shot, we can see in the background there the Umbar units, I think. Crossbow Corsairs. And we have these Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen. Do they still have their payload? These Sword Quindi doing their best. Now the catapult. I believe it's the Umbar catapult as well, so they will still have their ammunition. It's hard to see how the defenders can win this. Again, they're being split up. Again, you can see the gaps in the line. That's lethal, that is. Oh, they're reloading as well. The Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen with their concave scimitars. They're holding the wrong way round. They're reloading. Are they going to throw their javelins? I mean, I assume Rune still have the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen as well. Somewhere. Gotta be careful that I don't zoom in on them when they fire, because that will crash the game. With all of these bloom effects and vibrancy on. Yeah, as soon as they start throwing their javelins into the Dalian Paladins, that is once again going to be... I can see the giant swords of the Dale Dragonslayers in the background. They're not going to throw their javelins, it seems. Meanwhile, down here, the battle of who is the most stylish between Imladris and Rune. The Lok Sion Rim against the Imladris Storm Guard. In terms of style, I think I would give that one to Imladris. But in terms of effectiveness, this fight is certainly Rune's, so they will have the last laugh. still a little way in this fight to go, but I can't help but feel like the defenders have been on a downward trajectory this whole fight. We shall see. And it's getting to the point now where it looks like in the background over there they're sort of abandoning the bridges, which I don't blame them. They're going to make their final stand up on this land bridge. In the previous fight, this was where the ill-fated retreat of Rune occurred. Meanwhile, these Barding Herd are still holding very strong. I've got a soft spot for Barding Herd as well. They tend to do their job very well. They tend to be very good at holding the line for halberdiers. They don't have the advantage of the pikeman animation, but they have the mass and the damage and the armor piercing and the style. Gundabad Guard, meanwhile, certainly don't. I mean, they are a horrendously ugly unit, considering they're actually an elite unit. Meanwhile, they're just doing their thing. Attrition is the name of the game for the attackers. They don't need to panic. Again, over here, though, the defenders are actually going to win. The Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen, I think, retreated because the Dragon Slayers flanked around. Although they are taking some pretty severe casualties. There's only 18 of them left. They've already loosed their arrows, though. The Warlords of Umbar were victims of theirs. I'm surprised Umbar aren't committing forward, to be honest. I mean, at this point, overwhelm. Bring down the hammer. The defenders have got nothing in terms of range left apart from that one catapult, I believe. That is a very large clump of units, though. If we look back here, actually no, it's just dead bodies. It's hard to tell from a distance. Crossbow Corsairs moving up. Castamir's Chosen. Abrazanim. Yeah, I would give this to the attackers at this point. I could be wrong. Again, if the defenders can turn it into a real grind, maybe they still have a chance. But I'm not sure even then. I mean, they need to be very clever. They need to get a flank. I mean, they need to encircle the enemy. Sindar Blade Masters charging into the rear of these Lok Scion Rim. Defeat now seems certain. Hammer and Anvil with the Imladra Storm Guard, and now the Dalian Royal Guard. The Runic army is now faltering, so the defenders have actually thrown back this attack. So fair play to them. And if we look at the percentages, they've pulled ahead a little bit again. So again, it's not all over yet. Again, I feel like the attackers missed a trick here. I mean, I think they could have sent in these units sooner. And again, they still have stuff like these Crossbow Corsairs and these Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen. They have the skirmish advantage now, which, if you're on the defense and the attackers gain the skirmish advantage, it's heartbreaking, because you know there's very little you can do when you're backed into a corner like this. The catapult is firing. Oh, that was a very nice hit. Pinpoint accuracy onto that unit of Castamir's Chosen. Again, if you're under artillery fire, you may as well just commit your units as close to the enemy line as you can, because then they risk friendly fire. The Falas Lords are still in pretty good health. I mean, they lost Elrond, so I mean, certainly not doing... Although they do still have Eldarenway archers. Oh, and they're going for the Crossbow Corsairs. Good target to go for. The Crossbow Corsairs again. They don't fire regular crossbow bolts, they fire harpoons. Their missile damage is very frightening, but of course they melt under archer fire. What are they actually going for? Well, the Elves are actually advancing. Boldness. Pretty ill-advised, considering there's elite runic infantry right here. And the time for being bold has passed, long past for the defenders. They don't have the luxury of that anymore. There's a lot of gold on screen at the moment. Again, the spears, I think they're not going to get their killing done quickly enough. Although now the Falas Lords, Eldarenway archers that are out of ammunition, the High Elves are trying to take the front foot here, which I don't blame them. I mean, if they can eliminate this sort of frontal army before Umbar's elite infantry can get up there, I mean, this unit of Castamir's Chosen is coming, but a lot of the rest of it is lagging way, way behind. And again, the balance of power is... the defenders are starting to pull ahead again. The attackers could yet throw this away. Despite doing all the right things and exploiting the gaps in the enemy lines in their first defence. I'm not sure the defenders have got the elite units left to really hold back the attackers, but it's possible. Ooh, friendly fire, that's just what the defenders need. Actually, no, that wasn't friendly fire, was it? That was largely Eldarenway. well, bad luck. It's hard to tell with the golden armour of the Imladris units and the golden armour of the runic units. Having to go off of capes. Abrazanim Nadu Tariq. These Royal Guard, victory seems certain for them. The Nadu Tariq need to reform and engage these guys in melee. They are armour piercing. They should win with the numbers advantage, particularly seeing as they are about to be reinforced by Gamperin. The Nadu Tariq. Definitely a defensive focused unit. Also, I believe they're a unit that has locked morale in the current patch. I could be wrong, but I think that they are incapable of breaking. I think if they rout, they will always end up fighting to the death. Fighting to the death is kind of useless anyway, but it's a neat little thing about the Nadu Tariq. At least they were in 0.90 if my memory recalls. And again, I think the defenders smell blood here because they're sending forward more units of Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen ready to be committed. They need to be careful though, because bunching up too close, a few more losses. These Elder Enway archers are firing. Firing at what though? Ooh, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows. They need to target them immediately, and they are. Right, I need to keep an eye on these guys. These guys are terrifying when you see them on the battlefield. They're worse, I think, than the Witchers, because the Witchers, they do have slightly more in terms of their fireball ammunition, but in melee, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows are better because they have more numbers. And also, having more numbers means they're more difficult to skirmish down. I mean, the Elder Enway archers will give it a bloody good go because they're armor piercing, and they're getting a few kills. But I think that the Dragon's Wrath units are gonna be able to get into range. Abrazanim Nadu Tariq. Defeat is a distinct possibility because they're being surrounded by Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen and Falas Lords, but they are at least in melee, occupying the enemy. And at this point, the attackers need to use their skirmishers wisely. These Balchoth Sapphire Bladesmen, they still have ammunition. I mean, they need to make up their mind here. Tundra's Fox, he did some good work in the early game. He needs to do the same now. These Castamir's Chosen, defeat seems certain for them as well. Again, just goes to show the expertise of the Elven units in melee, and they're being backed up by Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen. Still have 10,000 frames, and we're getting to the business end of this battle here. The attackers are starting to bring it back again. Can the defenders? It hasn't really been a comeback, but I would think that the Dragon's Wrath crossbows are being retreated, so they're being saved for the late game. That's wise. This catapult crew is running around. What are they going to do, I wonder? Ah, they're trying to get into the crossbow corsairs. Very well spotted by Son of the Dunedain. So he's going to get into these crossbow corsairs, prevent them from firing. So again, the defenders, they started off pretty ropily, but as time has gone on, the better tactics have been employed by them. The Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen have been a bit of a lifesaver here, because their high attack and their high skill has really turned this line fight around. With the graphics enhancement I'm using, I do like the greenness of their capes. Defeat seems certain for the Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen. The Naru Na'aru Royal Archers still have ammunition, so they're still firing in. And again, these Gamperin are starting to come in. I think that the pikes they still have. Again, what about the Umbar Infantry? Carmel's Chosen as well. Again, I still think that the elite units are going to be too much. And again, all three miss. Heartbreaking. They do still have a pretty decent defense back there. Galadriel Veteran Warriors, Dalian Paladins, a Ballista. If that Ballista still has ammo, it could be very significant. What have we got over here? Are these guys finally going to use their ammo? There's that one Royal Guardsman that they just butchered. Catapult crew for Rune. Abrazanim Nadu Tariq. Castamir's Chosen. The crossbow corsairs managed to be victorious against the catapult crew. Well, over here we've got the Elder Enway archers. The Elder Enway archers, I believe, are going to try and go after the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen, wherever they hunkered down to. Where are they? Well, they have vanished from sight for the time being, and now Umbar sending forward more of their elite units. Castamir's Chosen, they're going to wrap around the line, and actually sending forward some more Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen to make sure that they can't do that. More Abrazanim Nadu Tariq. Not exactly the best unit to use against Lothlorien, it must be said. And I have to say, considering the fact that I've ragged on them a little bit in the last two battles, the Falas Lords have done an excellent job at holding this hill against the advance. They have they've absorbed a tremendous amount of pressure. Over here, the balance of forces is evenly matched. The Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen, 2 units of them, halting the advance. of these two elite Umbar infantry units. Defeat is almost a certainty again. It's close, only 7% in it. I thought it would be much less close than it is. And this catapult crew, blocking the advance of these Eldaranway archers, they will fall very quickly under the Elven blades. We've got these Naru Na'aru Royal Archers, which I believe were the target of the Eldaranway archers. They were trying to prevent the skirmish fire from continuing to rain down on their lines. And those crossbow corsairs have been dealt with by the remnants of that Eldaranway archer unit. The Balchor Sapphire Bladesmen are finally throwing their javelins. That could be what finally breaks this position, or not actually. They're going to defend this position to the bitter end. There's 2 units of Dalian Paladins still in play. And that's gonna wrap up the elite Umbar infantry. The Carmel's Chosen is coming in though. That will be a very effective unit to use against the Dalian infantry, but this Balchor Sapphire Bladesmen engaged by the Eldaranway archers. A good charge up on them, so the javelins being prevented from doing their work once more. The Gamprim are holding a good front line here. Let's see here. It's still looking good for the defenders. Is that the catapult, or is that the ballista? Is that ballista firing? It's idle at the moment. Dalian Spearman. Yeah, these Dalian Paladins reinforcing the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen, and that will be sufficient to destroy what's left of Umbar. Although over here the Nadu Tariq have done a fantastic job at ripping through this other unit of Sylvan... Well, this was Sylvan Heavy Archers, so no wonder. The Barding Herd, a very depleted unit of Barding Herd, is going to engage them for the time being. We'll see how well that goes. There's another unit of Sylvan Heavy Archers coming in. A unit of Dalian Spearmen helping out the Dalian Paladins. Again, this might be a little bit... This is going to be tricky for the defenders to deal with. These 2 units, at least I assume it's 2 units, they're advancing in separate ways. Actually, no, it's just one, I think. Well, regardless, this Carmel's Chosen is going to be a very difficult unit for the defenders to deal with at this point. There's armor piercing, and of course it's pretty darn tough as well. And the defenders are going to run out of elite units faster than the attackers are. These Sylvan Heavy Archers are coming around. Sylvan Heavy Spearmen as well. Sylvan Heavy Archers are sort of trying to help out against these Carmel's Chosen. The Sylvan Heavy Spearmen will be required as well. And indeed, here they come. Defeat is now almost a certainty for them very quickly, and also the Umbar units are going to fold, and that means the Carmel's Chosen is going to be flanked by Dalian Paladins. Well, well, well. That Umbar catapult, and wherever the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen may be, they are going to be absolutely vital. The Naru Na'aru are still firing. The Shadow Guard are coming forward. The Dalian Paladins, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't say it's worth it to charge off on your own, because you're going to get surrounded, and these Paladins are too important to lose. Yep, it's not the right move. They're too slow. Going into direct archer fire. They're also going to take javelin fire from the side. Yeah, that could be the critical error that cost the defenders this match. I really hope it's not for their sake, because they've done a good job at turning this around, because early on it was looking bad for them. But those Paladins, man, they were needed. And the Ballista crew, the Ballista was obviously out of ammo, and the crew is being committed to the front line. Meanwhile, the other unit of Dalian Paladins is being used excellently. Oh dear. Oh boy, back up. Firing missiles, what are they doing? Are they firing the splinter shot or the fireballs? The fireballs would be game over. Oh no, they were interrupted right at the last minute by the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. If that was the fireballs, that would have been game over, because that was a very concentrated clump of Sylvan Heavy Spearmen and Dalian Paladins. And that would have been it. I mean, the defenders are really sallying out at this point. Honestly, still have some Dragon Slayers back here. The Falas Lords are still alive. The Shadow Guard have ripped through those Dalian Paladins. That was the wrong move for them. There's more crossbow corsairs, so there's another unit of very effective skirmishers. That I still think that's going to be the death of the defenders. They've done a fantastic job at turning this around. But I just don't think they can deal with those skirmishers. I mean, they're chasing them off. where they can. Again, Lake Town Spears. Lake Town Spears are not going to be able to deal with Abrazanim Narduzagar, wherever they are. There they are. And there's Naru Naaru Royal Guard. Corsair Blackguards. Oh, that's another very good skirmish unit. Very good in melee as well. Over here, though, I'm just going to keep my eye out for those bloody Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. Last time I cammed them up close, it crashed the game. These Carmel's Chosen are going to lose. You can see those Lake Town Spears just covering the rear, making sure they can't be reinforced. The Dale Dragon Slayers have also joined the fight with their literal Dragon Slayer swords.
Good tidings.
There goes the Runic General, Tundra's Fox, assassinated by those Elder Enway archers. Where was his general? That's a good point. Was that the Dragon's Wrath crossbowman? Well, it's hard to tell. Over here, though, this Carmel's Shadow Guard is going to beat this Sylvan Heavy Swordsman unit. What is this unit over here, then? Meanwhile, over here we can see that there was the... I thought those were just Corsairs, they're not, they're just stakes. Silly me. Does Catapult still have ammunition? Corsair Blackguards. I don't see how they're going to deal with all these skirmishers. And they still have just the right amount of... They have just enough elite infantry to fall back on. Well, I say just enough. The defenders are starting to run out of steam a little bit here. They're really committing forward more Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. Those Galadrim veterans could still turn this around. The Falas Lords are still alive. The Shadow Guard, this Carmel Shadow Guard is swinging it away from the defenders, tearing their way through important, depleted yet important units. But over here, all of these units are now freed up. The death of the Carmel's Chosen. How will the defenders do this? They still have a 6% advantage, but that could evaporate very quickly under skirmish fire. That Carmel Shadow Guard were victorious. They took a bit of a beating there. And they're going to have to deal with a unit of 30 Sylvan Heavy Archers, backed up by Sylvan Heavy Spearmen and a Ballista crew. And indeed, I think the attackers know at this point that the skirmish power they have is what's going to win them this fight. Because honestly, in terms of brute force, I mean, those Spearmen, Falas Lords, Galadrim Veteran Warriors, they would struggle to break through that using just their infantry. But when they do still have ammunition in that catapult, point blank shots. Oh, that's a big loss. The Dale General, along with a clump of paladins. Can they recover? We shall see. Those Sapphire Bladesmen are still firing. Defeat is a distinct possibility for the Dalian Paladins. They need the backup of the Lake Town Spears. I think Dale is just going to try and get as many kills as he can. Maybe he's hoping that these Spearmen will be the bait for all of what's left of the skirmish force, but hang on, no, the Elder Council. All of these units that were hidden at the start, the Galadrim Veteran Warriors, have charged forth, and they're backed up by Spearmen. This boldness from the defenders could win them this, because again, sitting back would play into the attackers' hands with their skirmishers at this point. The Blackguards, there they are, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows. I mean, they have the perfect opportunity to be used here on this blob. The Elder Council, though, I mean, the Elder Council need to target these, and they're not. They're targeting, I believe, the crossbow Corsairs. Maybe they haven't seen the Dragon's Wrath crossbowman. The fireballs could do it.
Our ally lies dead. Pray something changes.
That is the Lothlorien General.
The defeat seems almost certain.
And the Blackguards. They're firing their missiles. Is it the fireballs? Doesn't look like it. Nope. I guess they're using Splinter Shot. Well, I guess that's better for me because it means it probably won't crash. But again, fireballs would win them this fight. Still got the Falas Lords, the Elder Council, offering some skirmish power for the defenders. They've managed to deal with the crossbow Corsairs, but the Blackguards are probably what's going to turn this around. I mean, over here, the Abrazanim Narduzagar looks like it's going to be victorious, but then they were mostly up against Lake Town Spearman. What's going on over here, I wonder? There is a fight, and it's a fight that Lothlorien are winning. No, it isn't. The Carmel Shadow Guard are going to win. The Spears just don't have enough attack, and the Ballista crew is back up. But again, this is basically going to be no one wins over here, so the flank is not going to happen, and as a result, I think that the attackers are going to win it. Elder Enway Archers flanking around. The Falas Lords are going to flank around as well. There's one Dale Dragon Slayer in amongst the Crossbow Corsairs. He'll win as well, if they don't back up the Crossbow Corsairs. I mean, the Dragon's Wrath crossbows are running away again. This front line, it's brutally close at this point, 94 to 95%, but I think the attackers still have this. For all of the defenders' valour, the Elder Council trying to flank around. Again, I think those Elder Enway Archers were maybe committed a little prematurely. They're just going to die to Blackguards in melee. Blackguards are legitimately fantastic in melee. These Falas Lords, are they just going to try and charge through, or are they just going to join this front line and try and secure at least a partial victory? How are those Galadrim veterans doing? There's only 8 of them left. Again, the Abrazanim Narduzagar are a very good unit to go against the Galadrim veteran warriors with. The Falas Lords getting into the Corsair Blackguards. There's not enough of them left there. It's just going to be a delaying measure. Or unless they can pin them in... Oh no, the Elder Council are out of ammunition. The Elder Council are going to charge in though. I mean, the Blackguards and the Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen will still win. But who knows, if they can win the front line, maybe they do still have enough. Although it's not looking good on this front line. Victory's starting to look certain for the attackers on every front. Again, maybe if they just defended a little bit better in the early game, the defenders could have had this one, I think, but the elite units that the attackers have got left, just going to be a little too much for them to bear, I think. Yeah, the Lake Town Spears are not going to beat Narduzagar. Alas, the poor Bardings. Again, some people don't like Dale. I do. They're a little bit one-dimensional. Again, a little bit predictable. They're obviously going to go skirmish heavy. They're a little bit slow compared to some of the other human factions, but even so, I mean, despite being one-dimensional, it's a very effective dimension they have. Oh, the Shadow Guard were victorious in a little bit more... in more capacity than I thought on that flank. And they're going to come over here. They're going to tie up this fight. Against the Elder Council. They've got really neat shields. I really like the model of the Elder Council.
Good tidings. The enemy general lies
Well, there goes
dead.
the Umbar general. Castamere. So, I mean, whose general is still alive? Gundabad's died, Rune's died, Umbar's died. So, yeah, everyone's general is going to be dead by the end of this, I think.
The battle. Rally them.
Yeah, there go Dale. It's all over for Dale. Actually, all of the defending generals are dead as well, aren't they? So, yeah, every general is already dead. Can anyone truly claim victory here? But yeah, the attackers definitely, I think, won this in the early game. The defenders were just left with a little too much to do with all of that elite infantry that they had left to try and deal with. Again, it was that moment when Gundabad really filed in through the gaps. I think Rune, the initial assault was very well thought out, and then the gaps in the line were exploited by Gundabad. Of course, Gundabad were the first army to fall, but that's the price you pay for going in first. But sometimes it's a price worth paying. The Elder Council are gone. The Blackguards taken very minimal losses.
On this day, we have nothing to be ashamed of. It was but a cruel twist of fate that snatched victory from our grasp.
Well, to a point, yes. But yes, Umbar getting the least amount of kills. Not surprising, because he was essentially the final hammer blow for the hopes of the defenders. He hung back and let Gundabad and Rune really take on the lesser Dalian and Lothlorien units in the beginning. The highest amount of kills going to Lothlorien, again, probably the most skirmish heavy of the army compositions that were on display, so again, not too surprising. And over here we can see that we get the Dalian players' statistics, because of course he's the one that sent me in the battle. Marksman getting 139, Royal Guard getting 154, that's not a bad return on a unit that doesn't have a huge amount of ammunition. Swordmaster's 133 in the early game. The rest of his units, again, a lot of the Lake Town units, not a lot of kills. You know, Dalian Spearmen, not a lot of kills. Hearth Watchman got 10. That unit of Lake Town Spearmen got 0, which is quite remarkable. The Paladins, I feel like the Paladins could have been used better. I think they were used a little carelessly. But again, there's no use looking back on what could have been. The attackers narrowly won, very close indeed. Can I still see the percent? Nope, that's not the right percentage at all. But again, it was definitely within 5%, possibly 4%. Very good fight indeed. I very much enjoyed watching this one. TOL FALAS always seems to provide pretty decent battles to watch. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.